on, guys? It's Della here and welcome to my second ever YouTube video. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how I play Wukong in the top lane. Now this is a champion that has done a lot of good for me. Wukong is an amazing solo queue carry with so much outplay potential. I wouldn't call myself a Wukong main or one trick, as I just play whatever is best for my team, but I do know a lot about this champion since he's my go-to choice. I've achieved about a 70% win rate on him in Diamond 4, Diamond 3 Elo. I've learned a bunch of tips and tricks while climbing the ranked ladder with Wukong, and I'm here to share them with you guys. So with that being said, sit back, relax, and let's get right into the guide. Now before we get into the details of this guide, let's get one thing straight. Many people think Wukong is a tank or a bruiser, for I don't know what reason. Maybe it's because he has a defensive passive, but this doesn't mean he has to build tanky. I've seen far too many games be thrown by a Wukong who has a 2-0 lead on his lane and decides to build around Randuin's first item. I'm sorry to say this if you play Wukong this way or if you think this is how he's played, but it's simply wrong, and I'm here to help you. Wukong is much better played and has an amazing kit to be an assassin. He has a gap closer, high burst damage, and a stealth ability that allows him to engage and escape. His passive is just icing on the cake. Now because this is an advanced guide, I'm going to be going over his basic abilities pretty quickly. You can pause the video if you want to read his spell descriptions. I can always make a more in-depth guide for beginners as well, if that's what you guys want. But this guide is for climbing ranked, so we're going to be talking about more advanced mechanics. Wukong's passive gives him increased armor and magic resistance based on how many enemy champions he's near. Simple. His Q increases his basic attack range, giving him extra damage and reduces the enemy's armor by an increasing percentage. Note that his Q can actually hit over walls if they're short. His W is probably my favorite ability. It stealths him for 1.5 seconds and leaves behind a clone that will do damage to nearby enemies. We'll talk about this later. His E is a dash that targets an enemy and 2 enemies near them, dealing attack damage and increasing his attack speed for a short time. Note that it puts you right on top of the enemy champion, so it sets you up perfectly for your Cyclone, which deals a lot of damage. This is his iconic ability. It knocks up enemies and has one of the highest AD ratios in the game. So here are his runes and masteries. You can tweak some things around, but don't get rid of Thunderlords. It's the most important part of his kit. I pretty much use the same thing every game. Now let's talk about his build. 9 times out of 10, you're going to start with a corrupting potion. More experienced Wukong players can start with a longsword and 3 potions if they're certain that they can cheese the enemy and get an early first blood. The reason you start corrupting potion is because he has very low lane sustain without a Ravenous Hydra, and he can run out of mana after just a few trades. Not to mention, Wukong is a champ that trades a lot in lane, so you want to make sure you have enough mana to do so. If you start with a longsword, I'd recommend taking the Biscuit Mastery so you don't run out of mana as fast. As for the rest of his item build, it pretty much varies from game to game, as every champion's build should. When I make more guides in the future, I'll keep mentioning this. Keep in mind that you should never have a cookie cutter build for any given game. You should always be building what's best for your team and what you need to counter the enemy team. But in a general sense, your build should look something like this. If you're winning lane, you should try to get Ravenous Hydra as soon as possible. However, Hydra isn't the best early game item to rush if you're losing, because it won't allow you to freeze the lane and it has 0 defensive properties. If you're losing lane versus an AP, rush a Hex Drinker. If you're losing versus an AD, rush Ninja Tabby and Ghostblade. See what I mean? Your build should always adapt your playstyle in your current game, not anyone else's. Let's say you're laning versus Yasuo. I bet you really want to buy Ninja Tabby, but when you press tab, you notice that they have a Brand, Sejuani, Vayne, and Nami. See, if you get Ninja Tabby, you're going to get caught in CC and probably die. So play for the game, not the lane. Shifting my mind to get around you. In the laning phase, Wukong is a nightmare for other melee enemies. His long-range melee attacks make it easy for you to trade and harass under tower without getting hit. Having extra range on your basic attacks also means you'll get in an extra hit or 2 when you trade. When there are few or no enemy minions, you should always look for an opportunity to trade, unless you're against a Quinn or Renekton. His go-to combo is to E to the enemy, auto attack, and then Q. This way you proc your Thunderlords and deal massive amounts of damage without taking any damage because you can stealth away with your W. One tip that not many people seem to know about is that you can often hit and kill people after their flash if you use your Q properly. If you begin the Q auto attack animation, it will actually hit your target after they flash, generally killing them. I do this a lot. In fact, it's usually how I get first blood. By the way, this isn't a bug. The reason this works is because your attack range with Q is greater than half the distance covered by flash. The logic engine will register a hit if the range is greater than or equal to 50% of the displaced distance by flash. It's the same concept as a ranged champion beginning their auto attack animation on someone, but killing them even after they flash, because the projectile will launch. This is because Wukong's auto attack is effectively a ranged ability. I won't go into more depth for time's sake, but I can make a whole separate video on character displacement and abilities later if you guys would want that. Anyway, you don't have to understand the logic behind this, you just have to know that if you begin attacking someone with your Q on, it will hit them even after they flash, as long as your animation has begun before they flash. Alright guys, so now that you know how to trade effectively, let's talk about Wukong's W. Wukong's W is actually a champion entirely, kinda like Shaco's clone. So if you're about to get hit by a projectile and W at the right time, it will take the hit for you. This is really useful when dodging skill shots, like Ahri's Charm or Illaoi's Tentacle. One thing to keep in mind is Wukong's W is basically like a very short flash. This means it takes your character from one point and moves them to another point in the game, which is called character displacement. This is really important because it means you can dodge a lot of AoE abilities and hop over very small walls, like Yorick's wall. It might not seem significant, but it really is. The fact that it moves you a tiny bit forward allows you to get out of a lot of abilities like Swain's Root. You can basically dodge any skill shot in the game if you use Wukong's W properly. Like here, you can tell I'm 100% for sure gonna get hit by Lee's Q, but I W at just the right time and it hits my clone instead, allowing us a free escape. Just keep in mind that your W is another target, so it will cause you to get hit by AoE abilities like Bard's Stun or Jinx's Ultimate. A lot of the times you can mess with your opponent's head, pretending like you W'd just by standing still. This can help you buy enough time to escape or even get kills sometimes. You can also use your clone as a really good bait for people with hooks, like Thresh. He can see that I'm clearing this ward right here, and I know that he can see me. So right as I kill the ward, I press my W. He thinks he hooks me, so he comes in, and we end up getting some free kills. These are some really advanced mechanics, and they take a lot of practice to get perfect in those tight situations. But when you do, it improves your outplay ability so much. Wukong is a very relevant champion. Even when he's losing lane badly, he can still play a massive role in teamfights. No matter how far behind you are, with this build, you should always be able to one-shot the AD carry and backline. And that's why I think Wukong is a great champion to learn for solo queue. I hope you enjoyed the guide, guys. If you did, be sure to leave a like, and if you have any questions or requests, feel free to leave them below. Oh yeah, and I mentioned the giveaway winners in the description below, so if you're one of those people, add me in game so you can get your prize. And if you want to see more champion guides like this in the future, feel free to subscribe and let me know in the comments. Alright guys, this is Adela, and I'll see you guys in the next video.